Hello, all you freedom-loving people. The Supreme Court gave a green light to fire employees from the Department of Education. President Trump threatened secondary tariffs if Russia doesn't comply within 50 days, and the dispute in the DOJ over the Epstein files seems to have been resolved. Okay, let's get into it. Today, the Supreme Court allowed President Trump to put his plan of dismantling the Department of Education back on track so he can lay off nearly 1,400 employees. After the ruling today, Education Secretary Linda McMahon reacted to the news. McMahon said in a statement, "Today, the Supreme Court again confirmed the obvious. The President of the United States, as the head of the executive branch, has the ultimate authority to make decisions about staffing levels, administrative organization, and day-to-day operations of federal agencies." The ruling in McMahon versus New York took the form of an unsigned order wherein the Supreme Court did not explain its decision, but rather gave only Sotomayor's dissent. With the new ruling, the Supreme Court paused an order from U.S. District Judge Myung Jun in Boston. Previously, Judge June issued a preliminary injunction that reversed the layoffs and questioned the broader plan. He prevented the Department of Education from fully terminating employees. However, none of them were allowed to return to work. On March 20th, President Trump signed the executive order to close the Department of Education. He also stated that the department does not educate anyone. It maintains a public relations office that includes over 80 staffers at a cost of more than $10 million per year. And fresh off this green light from the Supreme Court, President Trump issued a sharp warning to Russia during a meeting with the NATO leader. President Trump threatened to impose a 100% secondary tariff on Russian goods if Moscow doesn't agree to a deal to resolve the Ukrainian conflict within the next 50 days. President Trump announced the move as he hosted NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte at the White House today.
As you know, we've spent $350 billion approximately on this war with Russia and Ukraine, and would like to see it end. It wasn't my war, it was Biden's war. It's not my war, I'm trying to get you out of it. And we want to see it end. And I'm disappointed in President Putin because I thought we would have had a deal 2 months ago, but it doesn't seem to get there. So based on that, we're going to be doing secondary tariffs if we don't have a deal in 50 days. It's very simple. And they'll be at 100%. And that's the way it is. That can be more simple. It's just the way it is. I hope we don't have to do it.
Secondary tariffs target countries that trade with sanctioned countries like Russia. President Trump emphasized that his proposed 100% tariff stands apart from a pending congressional bill. So together with the bill, the U.S. could hit Russia's trading partners with secondary tariffs of up to 500%. In response, the Kremlin blamed the Ukrainian government for the lack of progress. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov said, "We still await proposals concerning the timelines. The Russian side is willing to continue and hold a third round of talks." The search and rescue operation for the last flood disaster in Texas has not yet ended, and a new threat is on the horizon. Recovery efforts were initially paused on Sunday and later resumed, although officials continue to warn of ongoing flooding threats. On Sunday morning, another dangerous situation arose in central Texas. After warnings last week of unusual weather predicted, a storm system once again brought serious flash flooding concerns to parts of Texas, especially in the Hill Country and Concho Valley. Rainfall rates reached about 3 inches per hour in some areas, and all of this rainfall dumped into nearby rivers, so the Lampasas River levels rose rapidly. Earlier on Sunday, the Lampasas River level rose about 14 feet in 2 hours. This undoubtedly made things worse for disaster relief efforts in Texas. The search still continues in the Texas Hill Country for victims who were sadly swept away by the deadly historic flooding 10 days ago. Longtime conservatives and supporters of President Trump are not pleased with the handling of the Epstein files by Attorney General Pam Bondi. They sounded off on social media this weekend. This includes comments from retired Lieutenant General Michael Flynn, who was President Trump's national security advisor during the first administration. He posted, "Donald Trump, please understand the Epstein affair is not going away." The DOJ and the FBI said in a joint memo last week that there was no Epstein client list and that Epstein hung himself in his prison cell. But Flynn posted on X, "We cannot allow pedophiles to get away. I don't personally care who they are or what elite or powerful position they hold. They must be exposed and held accountable. Donald Trump, please understand the Epstein affair is not going away. If the administration doesn't address the massive number of unanswered questions about Epstein, especially the abuse of children by elites, it's very clear that abuse occurred, then moving forward on so many other monumental challenges our nation is facing becomes much harder." Last week, FBI Deputy Director Dan Bongino reportedly clashed with Bondi over the lack of transparency and threatened to resign over the matter. But yesterday, President Trump said that he spoke to Bongino, showing that the two remain close. And President Trump told the reporters outside Air Force One, "I spoke to him today. Dan Bongino is a very good guy. I've known him a long time. He's in good shape." President Trump also offered a strong endorsement of Bondi, as he did a few days ago. He posted, "What's going on with my boys, and in some cases gals? They're all going after Attorney General Pam Bondi, who is doing a fantastic job. We're on one team MAGA, and I don't like what's happening." He also expressed skepticism about the authenticity of the Epstein files because he said it was written by Obama, Hillary, Comey, Brennan, and the Biden-era officials. He wrote, "They created the Epstein files just like they created the fake Hillary Clinton, Christopher Steele dossier that they used on me, and now my so-called friends are playing right into their hands." Which makes sense in some ways because Epstein obviously didn't keep a list of who he trafficked young girls to. President Trump also wondered why so many people were holding on to this case. He added, "For years, it's Epstein, over and over again." But some MAGA supporters, such as Laura Loomer and Robbie Starbuck, are blaming President Trump along with Bondi for not releasing the files as promised. Starbucks said in a post, "They want their country back. This case became a symbol for all of that. Fair or unfair, that's the truth. President Trump rarely loses touch with what's happening among the base, but he's missing the pulse on this one." Former Republican Florida State Representative Anthony Sabatini said Trump is losing his touch. This is also the comment most frequently made by critics. President Trump advised everyone to focus on more important things. President Trump posted, "Let Pam Bondi do her job. She's great. The 2020 election was rigged and stolen, and they tried to do the same thing in 2024. That's what she's looking into as Attorney General and much more. 1 year ago, our country was dead. Now it's the hottest country anywhere in the world. Let's keep it that way and not waste time and energy on Jeffrey Epstein, somebody that nobody cares about." But the controversy also apparently affected FBI Director Kash Patel. It was reported that there was disagreement among FBI executives after the non-release of files on the Epstein case raised concerns. Reportedly, both FBI Director Kash Patel and Deputy Director Dan Bongino considered resigning if Attorney General Pam Bondi remained in office. The Daily Mail quoted a DOJ insider as saying that Bongino had made his position clear and that he would consider leaving office if Bondi did not resign. And Kash Patel told the Daily Telegraph that he shares Bongino's views and he may also reevaluate his stay if Bongino leaves. But Bongino has not yet formally resigned, and Patel later publicly denied speculation that he would resign. Patel posted, "It's an honor to serve the President of the United States, Donald Trump, and I'll continue to do so for as long as he calls on me." And Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche on Friday denied disagreements between Attorney General Pam Bondi, FBI Director Kash Patel, and Deputy Director Dan Bongino over the Epstein case. He posted on X, "All of us signed off on the contents of the memo and the conclusion stated in the memo." The suggestion by anyone that there was any daylight between the FBI and DOJ leadership on this memo's composition and release is patently false. But Elon Musk remains adamant that the file should be released. Tom Fitton of Judicial Watch is suing the DOJ for the freedom of information. And now there are reports that Ghislaine Maxwell is willing to testify to Congress about Epstein. Also, Representative Ro Khanna, a Democrat in California, announced that he will introduce an agreement on Tuesday forcing the House vote to release the full trove of Epstein-related files to the public. President Biden has had his troubles. He's had health issues, and now he's facing the auto pen scandal. In an interview with the New York Times, he defended his use of the auto pen for the last pardons that he made at the end of his administration. We all remember that in his final week in office, Biden granted clemency, and he pardoned more than 1,500 individuals, which was the largest act of clemency by a U.S. president. But who made the decision? Was it really him, or was it someone else? During the interview, Biden said that he made every decision on his own. But critics say that this is impossible. Imagine how long it would take the president to learn at least the status of the case for each person pardoned. Let's assume it's half an hour per case. Multiply that by 1,500 people, and that's 750 hours. But there's only 24 hours in a day and 168 hours in a week. So how did the former president accomplish 750 hours of work in those 168 hours? The New York Times said that according to the former president and his aides, Biden did not individually approve each name for the categorical pardons that applied to large numbers of people. The New York Times report said, rather, after extensive discussion of different possible criteria, Biden signed off on the standards that he wanted to be used to determine which convicts would qualify for a reduction in sentence. According to this, we assume that the former president set the criteria for pardons, and his aides picked out the eligible cases for Biden to review and approve. So if each case took only 5 minutes, then that's 12 cases per hour. So it would have taken 125 hours for 1,500 cases. Assuming that the former president did not go to his Delaware house for the weekend that week, but worked 7 days, he would have had to work 17.8 hours a day. So is this really possible? Even if President Biden was physically able to handle such a workload, would he have done nothing during that last week but review these cases for pardons? China is facing an unprecedented systemic recession, but this is a fact that the CCP officials have been trying to cover up, so it's very difficult to find direct data in order to understand the real situation. However, we can speculate on the severity of the problem from a couple of perspectives. There are multiple reasons for this. Today, we're going to talk about some of them. China's birth rate has reached a record low, and many foreign companies have left the country, and a large number of small and medium-sized Chinese enterprises have been liquidated. Let's start with China's birth rate. Data from the National Bureau of Statistics of the CCP show that from 2016 to 2024, China's newborn population has plunged from 17.86 million to 9 million per year. The number of births in China last year was the lowest since 1949, and the number of deaths in China last year was 11.1 million, while the birth population was only 9 million, which means negative population growth. And this is the second consecutive year of negative population growth in China. The continued decline in population has resulted in a significant decrease in the number of school-aged children. Data from the Ministry of Education of the CCP indicates that national enrollment in elementary schools decreased by approximately 14% in 2024 compared to 2023. At the same time, the maternity and pediatric departments of many Chinese hospitals have recently been removed due to the decline of newborns. Secondly, due to the disappearance of the demographic bonus and the tense trade relations between China and the United States, some foreign invested companies have begun to pull out of China and turn to Southeast Asian countries. So, how many foreign companies have moved out of China? We've not yet seen the real figures yet, but even though the number of foreign enterprises may have increased by 10%, the actual utilization of foreign capital has dropped 27%. And there are many companies that have moved their main operations out of China, but they have kept an office and not deregistered the company. In any case, the drop in the amount of capital employed can also be inferred from the decrease in the number of foreign companies hiring. Third, A large number of small and medium-sized enterprises in China were liquidated. In 2023, data from the General Administration of Market Supervision of the CCP showed that more than 4.3 million entities were liquidated, which was a 23% year-on-year increase in the number of liquidations, most of which were small and medium-sized enterprises. And as business closed in massive numbers, the unemployment rate went up. And even for those who have jobs, their incomes are now lower. This year, news of pay cuts and layoffs have been emerging even among high-income groups such as teachers, civil servants, and financial elites. A legal professional in Guangdong revealed that the annual salary of the local police officers had dropped to 200,000 RMB from 300,000 RMB the year before. And a middle-level employee of a state-owned bank in Dongguan said that his salary had dropped by 30% in 2 years and that his performance bonus was almost nothing. And the China Securities Association recently disclosed that the number of securities brokers in China declined by more than 73% over a 7-year period from the beginning of 2018. And as we entered 2025, the decreasing trend is still obvious. A total of 77 brokerage firms have reduced the number of brokers by more than 100, with the most layoffs approaching 500. Only 12 brokerages have increased their staff, and each of them has only added 1 or 2 people. Securities brokers are also earning less. According to Wind data at the beginning of 2018, the average commission rate in the securities industry was 3.8 per 10,000. But by 2024, this figure had fallen to around 1.8 per 10,000. Although the average industry commission rate has rebounded to around 2.4 per 10,000 in 2025, the decline in the frequency of activity of stock market trading in the context of current politics means that brokers are relying on a significantly reduced source of commissions. Reduced income and lack of hope for the future have weakened people's consumer confidence. According to a survey conducted by the People's Bank of China, the index of future income expectations of residents in the first quarter of 2025 is at an all-time low, and consumer spending on food and beverage, travel, and other choices has not yet returned to pre-pandemic levels. A survey of 20,000 households by the Central Bank of the Communist Party of China showed that more than 60% of them intend to increase their savings, which is an increase of nearly 20 percentage points compared to the pre-pandemic level. And there are also 2 ways to stimulate consumption: to raise incomes or to lower the cost of loans. Raising income is obviously not a short-term solution, so consumer loans are seen as a quicker alternative. Since the beginning of this year, the CCP has been issuing intensive guidelines requiring banks to increase the disbursement of personal loans. As a result of the CCP's policies, interest rates on consumer loans have reached record lows. Many commercial banks are offering consumer loans at an average interest rate of less than 3%, with a few even dropping to around 2.4%. At the same time, banks lowered interest rates on deposits in an attempt to discourage customers from saving money. However, these measures have not attracted borrowers, and banks are caught in a dilemma as they face a sharp rise in the default rate of personal loans. Reuters reported on Friday that loan managers and bank executives in Beijing have revealed that they are struggling to increase consumer lending because of low demand and a rapid rise in household bad debt, as well as uncertainty over customers' incomes. Official CCP data does not disclose the overall non-performing loan rate for consumer loans, but bank executives and loan managers told Reuters that personal loan defaults have risen sharply this year. The scale of bad loans sold in China's banking sector amounted to 74.27 billion RMB, which is about 10.34 billion US dollars. And this is just the first quarter of this year, which is nearly double the amount from the same period in 2024, according to data from the Banking Credit Asset Registration and Transfer Center. The next step for China's economy requires not just monetary tools, but a rebuilding of overall confidence. And that's a wrap for this episode. Thank you so much for your support of Front Page. Please remember to leave us a comment below the video. This is really helping us to be seen all around the world. The more people who watch Front Page, the more freedom-loving people the world will have. And please hit the like button and hit the notification bell after subscribing. And please share this video with your friends and family, because everybody deserves to know the truth.